I'm your host, Sharada Devi, of the Born to Be Free podcast that serves as a bridge between the ancient and the new era, a confluence of opposites where all is seen as sacred and every experience is meant to catapult you into your supreme destiny. I'm Sharada Devi, the host of this podcast called Born to Be Free. And this is my fourth episode dedicated to sharing with you how I found answers to the fundamental questions of life. How I found my answers to an experience that I've had when I was 18 years old in India, known as a spiritual awakening, and how I found my teachers. And so I'm so excited for you to be here with me. If this is the first time, or if this is now many times where you've been with me, please be part of our community. If you are interested and longing to give more meaning, more purpose, more grace, and more beauty to your life, this is your podcast. My life has been all about discovering what is the truth of our existence. And so I'm so excited for you to be here and join me in this new storytelling. And if you have missed the last 3 episodes, I invite you to go and check them out. The first one was dedicated to really understanding that all beings want to be free, that behind every desire is another desire, and that desire is the desire for freedom. My second episode was about a story, me, when I was 13 years old. When I was 13 years old, in Switzerland, in a place called Davos, and I wanted to take my life, to end my suffering basically, through taking my life, because that was the only solution I saw at that point, and how from there, my whole life, the trajectory of my life was one of being a maverick lemming, like being a person that didn't want to settle for what she was told, and she went her own truth, her own heart. She followed her heart. And the third episode is dedicated to how I traveled to India at 18 years old and followed my heart and really looked for answers and found answers. And I had my spiritual awakening where I understood that the truth of our existence is that we are love, that we are born free, and that we came here to discover that fact so that we can live a magical, fulfilled, truly happy life. And so this fourth episode is dedicated to the continuation, how I went back to India after having lived 5 years in Venezuela, where I recovered from this experience in India, because I had to pull myself together again. I was not in a very good shape at that time. I was in a mental hospital and I was going to Venezuela, and I had to recover my strength. And how I did that my own way. I didn't follow what the Western myth or the Western medical doctor told me to do. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing that. I just want to give another story, another way, a possible way that maybe could inspire you if you are in a situation like that, or if you know of a person that is in a situation where the doctors are telling them that they will never have a normal life, that they will be on medication the rest of their life, that they basically have to watch out and are imbibed in a fear-mongering, fear-fulfilled way of living, and which is very, very painful and very difficult. And that's not my way. That's not what I followed. I didn't believe that, what they told me. I knew that there was more to life, and something in my heart knew that I can heal myself. I knew that what I experienced when I was in India was true. I just didn't know exactly how I could come back to it or how I can explain it, but I knew it was true. So I chose my own way. I moved to another country and I found holistic ways of healing myself through yoga, through Ayurveda, through shamanic rituals like Temazcal, and being in nature a lot. And I started to volunteer in a foundation which helped me to spend my energy and give love to other people, because there was so much pain still in me, and a way to actually cope with all of that was through helping other people. Often we see that people that have a lot of pain in themselves, they start to help other people, and they start to feel really good about themselves, because it's not just anymore all about me and my suffering, but I'm here to help other people. The truth is we cannot ever really help anyone if we haven't helped ourselves first. Truly helping. But there is a time where sometimes we do gain a healthy self-image and a healthy self-esteem when I help other people, because I see that when I help other people, I start to feel good about myself. I start to neutralize the guilt that I'm feeling that has been infiltrated and embedded in us. I have a lot to say about that, but I'm not going to go too deep into that. Like, we were born into a culture where most of us, Western, born into culture, believing that we're born as sinners and that we have to feel guilty for everything that we have, that we are. And so often we do things out of guilt instead of out of gratitude, of true gratitude, because we understand that all that is given in life is a gift, is grace, is here to be enjoyed and to be shared. And so most of us live from this place of guilt, and we do things out of guilt. We help other people out of guilt because we feel we have it so good, we're so privileged, and why do they not have it the way I have? So I'm going to help to feel better about myself. That's quite a strong fact that might trigger some things in you. I invite you to be very gentle with yourself and just be with it and see if there's some truth to it for you. And so for me also, when I was in Venezuela and I was able to help other people that had bigger problems than I had, I felt better about myself. And so after 5 years of working, volunteering, getting myself together, having a healthy routine, I left Venezuela. I bought a ticket, one-way ticket, and I went back to India. I went back to Pushkar, the place where I had my spiritual awakening. And I arrived in Pushkar, I remember so well. And I walked through the streets, and there was a man. And then he looked at me, and his eyes started to become so big. And then he screamed, "You are alive!" He said, "You are alive!" And I said, "I'm alive!" So this man, this beautiful Indian man, he recognized me after 5 years because I went through quite an experience there in Pushkar. You can hear all about it in my previous episode, what I experienced there. And it was big and the people knew about it. And so in India, often it's very interesting if something happens to you, because there are so many people and so many spiritual seekers, you can say anything and people believe you if they want to. You can say or do anything and create a whole cult and you will have followers. Like, that's happens. And so me too, I was so convinced, I was so in my whole experience that for a while people believed me and they thought I was enlightened and this 18-year-old girl being enlightened. And then after a while we discovered it was all a little bit out of proportion. All the stories in my previous episode. Going back, arriving in Pushkar, he looking at me and screaming out of joy, "You're alive." And I said, "Yes, I'm alive." And I was smiling at him. And I was just so happy that there was somebody there that was there with me, experienced to a certain extent what I had experienced at that time in India. And he said, "Okay, I help you. I'm going to get you a room. I'm going to get you food. Just come with me." That's the Indian culture. You are the God and they treat you as God. They make you feel welcomed immediately. So I told him, I came back to understand really what happened. Because nobody in the last 5 years could explain to me what had happened to me. Some people said I had a psychosis. Other people said a spiritual awakening. All kinds of things. But nobody really could tell me. I read many, many books when I was in Venezuela. And I did get some insights. And also my yoga teachers in Venezuela, I asked them about this kind of experiences, but nobody could really give me answers. And in the West, you know already what they told me, that I'm crazy and I will never have a normal life again. So I couldn't believe that, right? Because my life would be miserable if I would have believed that. And I'd rather go with, I had a spiritual awakening, understanding that there's much more about life than what we think. But still, nobody could really help me understand it, and especially help me get over the fear that I had. Because, of course, a part of me was so afraid that this will come back. I will not really live a normal life anymore. I am sick. I am crazy. Of course, there was a part of me that was really scared and really afraid. And there was another part that was equally strong, knowing that I had experienced the truth. So with all of that, I was back in Pushkar and I told my friend, look, I'm here. I'm on a mission. I want to know what's real. Like, what's the truth? Like, what is really real? Like, what is the spiritual awakening? How are we God? How are we one? And by that time, I have done a lot of yoga. I was an Ashtanga yogi, an Iyengar yogi, a Jivan Mukti yogi, a Dharma Mitra yogi. I did so much yoga in Venezuela. Like, I became obsessed with yoga. Maybe you can identify with that. I know many of my students, they were also obsessed with yoga, and then the whole yoga thing became all about the body and all about being flexible and all about doing Pincha Mayurasana, which is this scorpion position, or doing the split Hanumanasana, or then you're able to meditate and sit in lotus position, or you can hold your breath for 7 minutes and then you're enlightened. But what if you cannot do the split? What if you cannot hold your breath for that long? What if you cannot sit in meditation in lotus position? Are you never going to be enlightened, and are you never going to be spiritual? Right? So I know so many people, and so many of my students also have felt so much suffering and pain because like they went into yoga or meditation or qigong or all these kind of modalities to find happiness, to find meaning. Because we try to find meaning and happiness in the world, in the relationship. I talk about that in my other episodes. Right? But we know that there is no happiness to be found in the relationship. I'm talking about true happiness, a happiness that doesn't come and go. There's no happiness to be found in being a mother or father, like a true happiness. There's relative happiness. You gain some happiness. But the child cannot be the source of your happiness, because if it is, you'll be miserable, because the child is not going to do what you want it to do. The job is not going to give you truly happiness. The money is not going to give you truly happiness. So at one point you discover you've got to find happiness somewhere else. And that's where we start to look in, like other modalities, yoga, meditation. And then we have a whole world opening up that is unknown to us. But then there is also a world within a world, and they tell you all kinds of things what it means to be spiritual. So, like, I was in that world. And so I had the yoga and I had all of this beauty, but I was not happy. I couldn't accept myself because there was always somebody else better in the yoga, always someone else that was better in doing the asana, the position. And so even there I felt inadequate and not good enough and painful. So coming to India, I said, like, now I studied some yoga and still I'm not happy, like, and I had this experience, like, what is really real? Like, what is the true purpose of life? What is spirituality really? And he couldn't really tell me. He, a wonderful man, he couldn't tell me, he couldn't answer my questions. And before, actually, I was already looking for many teachers and I couldn't find a teacher that I could trust. I went to many yoga schools and I asked, and I didn't find the answer that really satisfied my heart. And I could also see through the shadows of the people. Like some teachers I met, they were still angry and there were still a lot of shadow sides and I couldn't trust. And thanks God as I didn't trust. Right? So basically, I was there in Pushkar and came and left the place and looking for teachers. I didn't find, and there was a certain sadness, and I thought I would leave the next day, weeks after. And what happened is I was invited to a temple festival, a temple dance, a devotional dance ceremony. And that was the night before I was supposed to leave, the day after. And I went to that temple and I went to this dance ceremony, this devotional dance, and something happened. I saw these dancers, which were not just dancers, they were priestesses and priests. And something happened in me. I started to cry and cry and cry and cry. This moment of, I know this. The dance, the story, the devotion, the prayers, it spoke to me. I knew I know this. I knew I have to do this. I knew I have to dance because all I ever wanted was to be a dancer. I speak about that in my first episode. How I, as a little girl, all I ever wanted was to be a dancer. And I was told I will never be a dancer. And so there I was, seeing that dance and knowing I have to dance. My whole being knew. But in that moment, I was like, a fear overwhelmed me and thought like, what if I cannot dance? What if I cannot join this group and sign up? And so there was a moment of fear, but also a moment, in the same moment, I knew somehow I'm going to make it happen. And so after the dance recital, I went there and I inquired. And they said, yeah, tomorrow we start a new course, a new intensive course the next day. And I said, I can join, I can join this course. And they said, yes, we are a school. It's called Shakti School of Dance, a beautiful school in Pushkar, run by Kolina Shakti, amazing woman, amazing priestess dancer. And so she runs these schools since many, many years in Pushkar. And she offered these intensive courses. And I signed up. And the next day I started to dance, 6 hours a day. The next day I danced 6-hour days. Weeks passed by, I danced. Months passed by, I danced. Years passed by, and I danced. All I did was, I just danced. And here the dance is, you don't just dance, you dance the stories of the gods and goddesses. You dance the story of Shiva, the Shiva who is the ecstatic, who is the one that has knowledge and shares knowledge. You dance the story of Durga, the great mother of this whole universe, who is fearless and full of courage and has strength like a warrior who rides across the lion over the sky and takes care of the people who cannot protect themselves. You dance the story of Saraswati, who's the goddess of arts and music and words. You dance the story of Kali, she who's like, the goddess of death. The goddess who is in touch with her righteous anger and rage and hatred and expresses it and makes love to it and transforms. So every dance, every deity became my family. They became my brothers and my sisters. They became the family I've never had. My mother and father and sister and brother, bless their hearts. I love them, I adore them. But they couldn't give me what I needed. Right? I needed to be seen, to be held, to be loved, to be championed, to be celebrated, to be told that I can be whatever I want to be and that I'm everything. And that's what these gods and goddesses do. They tell you that you are everything and that you can be anything. They are a sacred mirror to tell you the truth of your existence. And so there are countless gods and goddesses appearing as all these different forms and colors and energies and qualities. But the truth is there's only God and only goddess. The truth is there are not many gods or many goddesses. The truth of the Vedic heritage, the spiritual Vedic heritage, is that all that is here is goddess. All that is here is God, means all that is here is sacred. And the sacred, the divine, manifests in the form of this whole universe, in the form of space, in the form of the air, in the form of the fire, in the form of water, in the form of the earth. And from these 5 elements, everything else appears. And we have all these different qualities, and we have the animals, and we have this incredible, beautiful world, or universe, or universes. And this dance is a lovemaking, is a portraying of the grace of life and telling these stories. And so I learned so much through these stories, and I was able to embody what I felt so deeply in my heart, that we are love and that we are one, and discovered an inner power that I was longing my whole life. For the first time ever, I felt like a woman. For the first time ever, I felt I was beautiful, because I never felt beautiful. I hated everything about myself. Growing up in Switzerland, they tell you from very small onward that you're imperfect. Right? You have a body size, you have hair, you have eyes that should look a certain way. And I did not fit into that category. So everything I saw was ugly. Like I hated my body. And I know so many people hate their bodies because we are told that our bodies should look a certain way. I hated my moon. I didn't even have my cycle for so many years because I was so rejecting my feminine side. I hated my pleasure, my sexuality. I was like, rejecting everything that is amazing about myself. Until I went into this dance and I recovered my power, my beauty, my sensuality, my sexiness, But there was still a part that was fighting, that was striving. There was still this like unhealthy masculine, this part in me that now needed to be the best dancer. And that was impossible, right? Because I came to India when I was, at that time, 23, 24 years old. And there are others that have danced their whole life, that come from a dancer family. How would I, as a Western girl, ever, ever be an accomplished dancer in a place where people learn these kind of arts when they're in the womb, where the family comes from a lineage of dancers, or if it's Ayurveda or yogis. Right? There's a pride there when you're born into a family generation where the art is passed on. And so I was born in Switzerland, Filipina, coming to India again at 24 years old, trying to be an accomplished Indian classical dancer. No way I would make it. And the pain that is there in the whole dance and art scene in India, it's terrible, so much pain. It's no other than in Switzerland or in England or in Italy. The pain is everywhere, also in India. But, like there's the big but, there's still some sense of magic there. There's still some sense that there's a higher power and that there's more to life than what we know. There's still a map for the human beings to follow. If and when they are ready, they can discover what true happiness is. We call that the Veda. The Veda is a book, is a body of knowledge that is there in the Vedic culture for people to live a spiritual life. And so the whole art scene and the art is all the portraying the Vedas through stories and music and dance, and it's so rich. And so I was there in India dancing months after months after months, learning all these choreographies, embodying these gods and goddesses. And at different times, I again had this kind of spiritual awakenings. Because what happens, maybe you've also experienced that, as a dancer, as a musician, suddenly the art becomes you. You know you're not doing the music anymore. You know you're not doing the painting becomes you, the music is you. And same when I was dancing, suddenly the dance, I was not dancing. The dance was dancing me. I was invoking these deities and I felt like Shiva, I felt like Kali. And I had these moments again, and at times I was scared because I felt it again. But at that time I had enough yoga, I had enough discipline over my own body to be able to calm myself, ground myself, and come back to just being able to function and filter my experience with the outside experience. So many times I had these experiences coming back, these kind of spiritual awakenings. But this time I was more resourced, different than when I was 18 years old. So at this time I was dancing and I knew I'm not going to continue living in India somehow. And I heard of Bali. And I heard that Bali is the island of the gods and goddesses. I heard Bali is paradise. I heard Bali is the place where you go when you want to be retired. I heard that Bali is the place where you go when you've done everything and you just want to live in an oasis, in a sanctuary, because it's the most beautiful place on earth. And when I heard that, I asked myself, why would I want to wait? Why would I go to Bali when I retired? I want to go to Bali now. I want to be in the most beautiful place now. Why wait? Maybe you have waited long enough. Maybe now is the time to sign up to this course. Maybe now is the time to start doing this piano class. Maybe now is the time to travel to Africa. Maybe now is the time to tell that person you've been in love with that you're loving them. And so I said, like, why wait? I want to be there now. And so I went to Bali. And the moment I arrived in Bali, I knew that it's going to be my home. And this was 16 years ago. 16 years ago, I made foot on the land, on the island of the gods and goddesses. And I've lived since 15 years in the same house, in the same garden, with the same spiritual community. And why 15 years? Because I came to Bali 16 years ago. And for 1 year, I was teaching the dance I learned in India with 8 different children in Bali. Because Bali is the same Vedic culture like India. Bali is also Hindu, and Bali also sees life as sacred. They also have a sense of oneness. And the moment you step foot on Bali, you feel that. You feel the magic. Everyone feels it who goes to Bali. It's the land of offerings. It's the land of the smiling people. Life is an offering there. Everywhere you see incense and flowers, and it's so exuberant. And so when I was there, and I came with this dance with me, a dance that was also portrayed in Bali. In Bali, there are more temples than houses. More temples than houses. And the people live in sacred symbiosis with nature, and they do offerings, and part of their offerings is dance and music. So I had the privilege to teach the kids in Bali for many, many months this dance, and I brought my teachers from India to Bali to teach those kids, teach those children, and so that we could together as a group offer this dance in the temples of Bali. Like I told you, I would not become like this famous dancer, or maybe I would have, who knows? But it wasn't about that. It was not about wanting to be a performer for me ever when it came to the dance. I didn't want to compete with other people. I had enough competition in Switzerland. For me, this dance was my life, my breath, my energy, my offering, my devotion, my love. I didn't want to compete. Why would I compete in front of the sacred, in front of God, Goddess? In front of God, Goddess, we're all lovable and acceptable as we are. We don't need to compete with each other. And also in India, they compete. So when I came to Bali and I saw that they were dancing these sacred dances, not as a competition, but as an offering to say thank you to life, my heart was so happy, so happy. I knew I found my place, because here I can dance not to compete, not to impress anyone, but just out of love, out of gratitude for life. And so when I taught these kids and I brought my teacher, and he helped me and all of us to really create this beautiful group. And then we were invited to offer this dance, these prayers in many, many different temples of Bali. A dream became true. What was the dream? To become a dancer, like a true dancer. And so for months and months and months, we danced in all the temples of Bali as a prayer, as an offering. And I remember I was so fulfilled, like a part of me. I was so grateful, so fulfilled, because I finally had fulfilled this childhood, this girl's dream to be a dancer, become a dancer. I lived in a country that I adored, that there was so much mystery and so much beauty, and I knew there's still so much for me to learn. And for the first time ever in my life, I felt at home. For the first time ever, I felt like I belonged here. For the first time ever, I felt seen and appreciated and just loved for who I was and seen. And so when I was there, I was so grateful. But a part of me was still that girl that had experienced this event in India. And I was still afraid that it could come back, and at any time it could come back, and suddenly I would be overwhelmed. I still didn't know what freedom truly was, what happiness truly was, because now I was happy. But why was I happy? Because of the dance. Right? I had a reason for my happiness. Right? And so naturally, that happiness was again in degrees, because it was because of the dance. So it wasn't like a true fundamental happiness, because there was a reason there. So I understood that I've accomplished so much in terms of the spiritual world, but I wasn't truly fully happy. And I was still attached. And I was still addicted now to the dance. I felt bad about myself when I didn't dance 5-6 hours a day. I felt bad about myself when I didn't practice every day. Do you know that? Right? Maybe you can relate to that. You could be a sports person, ice hockey, ice skating. You could be a musician. You could be a yogi. And you feel bad about yourself if you don't do it every single day. That means you're still attached and addicted to something. And your happiness still depends on something else other than yourself. And that was my case. Like I knew now, I'm so happy, but it's because of the dance. And if I cannot dance, I feel terrible. I feel angry and anxious. And so I understood that. And I started to dance and offer every single dance that I was dancing, which was a prayer for me. I offered it into the universe. And I said, please give me answers. How can I be truly happy? How can I be fully fulfilled and truly be free from any fear? Please bring me a teacher. I asked for a teacher. I asked for teaching, for something that could give me some sense, answer these questions and truly end this suffering. Truly end the suffering of not being able to fully accept myself and still being under constant pressure and still thinking I need to improve and still thinking I need to be this. Please end this suffering. And then after 1 year, finally I found my teacher. How did I find my teacher? Because I was at a dance retreat and a beautiful goddess, a beautiful friend who was also dancing, her partner came to visit us. And we started to talk. And at that time, I was still sharing with many people about my experience that I had when I was 18 years old, because I was still wanting to understand what really happened in India. I still had all these questions. And so I had an immediate rapport with this person, this beautiful man called Johan. And then he started to tell me about a Swamiji who dedicated his life towards understanding, towards discovering, towards freedom. A person that dedicated his whole life to be free, truly free. And he told me that this person had done 3.5 year courses in Sanskrit, in the Vedic scriptures, in India with his guru. And I was mesmerized. I was like, wow, does that even exist? Person that dedicates their whole life to spiritual knowledge. And at the beginning I was thinking, that's not for me, because I still want to be in a partnership. I still want to have sex. I want to still live my life, and I cannot live in only ashram alone, and ashram being an institution, a place for spiritual growth. But then I learned very quickly that I don't have to live in an ashram, and I can still be in a partnership. I can still have sex. I can still have all these things and also gain freedom. So when I understood that, I asked, could I go and meet him? And he said, yeah, I'll bring you to him. And the day came. I came to Purnastanam, the place of fullness called, in Ubud, under a huge banyan tree. So I walked down the steps, crossing the banyan tree, a huge old 400 years old banyan tree. And I walked on the knees. I went up this little path, looking at the roots and continuing. And then there was this wooden house. It was one wooden house there, like a bamboo house, all naturally built. And I entered there, and there was a little court, a little space. And there he was sitting, Swamiji. And we sat down. There was a few other people, not many people. And we sat down. It was very quiet. Everyone was quiet. Nobody was really chattering. We just sat down. And then it took a moment, and he started to chant. Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karavavahai, Tejasvina Vadhi Tamastu Mavit Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So he chanted that mantra. Immediately I felt this is deep. I didn't know what it meant at that time at all. He chanted it, and he explained that this is a prayer, a chant that invokes the blessing and protection between you and I, between you, the listener, the student, and me, the speaker or the teacher. It's called the teacher-student prayer, and it's here to invoke protection. It is here for us to neutralize any animosity. If in any case we would start to argue with each other, may we never argue with each other. The prayer asks that our hearts are one, become one, and that we create a bond, that we create and establish trust, so that knowledge can be passed on. Because knowledge only is passed on when there is trust. And for trust to be there, there has to be an open heart. And so this prayer invokes this trust, invokes this heart connection, so that you and I bring the best out in each other. So that you gain and me gain and we both gain. And that this knowledge can be passed on. What kind of knowledge? The truth. Knowledge is meant to reveal truth. And here we are not just in front of any person or any teachings. We're in front of a Vedanta teacher. A Vedanta teacher is a teacher that reveals truth. And what is the truth? That you are free. That is the truth. That you are whole and complete here and now. And he looked into my eyes, these beautiful eyes, looked into my eyes and told me, you are whole and complete. And all you need is to know. All you need is to know that you're whole and complete. And because no matter whatever experience you ever have had or ever have or will have, it cannot affect you anymore. Because when you know what is your truth, what you truly are, you're not affected by the experiences of life. And why are we suffering? Why was I suffering? Because I identified with the experience, with what has happened to me. Not only with the experience that happened to me in India, thinking that, like one part of me thinking that I'm crazy, but I was also identifying with the experience that happened to me as a little girl when my parents got divorced. I identified with the experience that happened to me when my father passed away. I identified with experience with looking different and being alienated, and I identified with the experience of taking my own life and thinking there's something wrong with me. You are identifying with all your experiences. We all are identifying with our experiences. We're making a judgment upon ourselves based on our experiences. And the truth is, and that's what he told me, the truth of every experience is it comes and it goes. And it has absolutely nothing to do with what you are. It has absolutely nothing to do with what you are. You are free. Right? And this is the meaning of a gesture that is very famous in the yoga world and spiritual world. It's called the jnana mudra. Mudra means a gesture, and jnana means knowledge. And here the mudra, the gesture, is a gesture of knowledge, a gesture of expressing that you are whole and complete, like you are free. There is no end, there is no beginning, you are limitless, you are whole. This is the meaning of this gesture. And so that's what he dedicated his life to discovering these truths. And you may think, what, it took him 40 years to discover this? It didn't take him 40 years to discover this. It doesn't really matter how long it takes. But what matters is that you, me, we don't know that we are free. We all have identified with our experiences and made judgments upon ourselves for many, many, many years. And not only many years, actually many lives. So if it takes a few years to neutralize these judgments, that's okay. Because I can tell you now that you're whole and complete. But you will stop this episode and not know that you're whole and complete. We stop this episode and we maybe are going to continue fighting with our parents, with our neighbor, blaming the president, making the world responsible for my happiness. Or you may take this now, this jewel, this absolute priceless jewel, knowing that you're free, and deciding to discover how that is really true, so that you really know that, so that you can say, you are free, I am free, I know that I'm free. Not that the spiritual teachings of India or of the Native Americans or the Egyptians say I'm free. That you can say, I am free. And yes, it's okay. And we all, for the time being, will say, the yogis say I'm free. But the day has to come where you can say you are free, and where you know that that is true, and where you don't depend anymore on something outside of yourself for your freedom even. But for a long time, we probably will depend upon the modality that tells me what I truly am. And so my teacher, of course, like all of us human beings, for so long we have thought that we are not free, that there's something wrong with us, that we are a human being that is born in time and is going to die in time. We all think we're going to die. We are afraid of death. And the truth is, you're never going to die because you were never born. You are free. You have no beginning, no end. You are limitless. You're whole and complete. You are born to be free. And there are people that have dedicated their life to discovering this fact. Just like there are people who have dedicated their life to become a tennis pro, like Roger Federer. So if you want to become a tennis pro, you better go to Roger Federer. But if you are want to be free, you better go to a freedom teacher. So I stayed with my teacher the last 15 years. The day he told me that that's what you are, I said, this is what I'm going to dedicate my life to. And so I have lived for 15 years in Bali, studying these sacred teachings that reveal that I am free, that you're free, that we are free. I studied the teachings. I dived into the devotional practices that are, yes, the dance, but also Vedic chanting and mantra and Sanskrit and rituals. And because I am a woman, I also discovered that I had a lot of trauma when it came to be a woman, what it meant to be a woman. And so I also have dedicated my life to understanding what it means to be a woman and how to fully reclaim my power as a woman, not only as a human being, but really as a woman. And that meant to dive into my relationship to my body, relationship to my pleasure, my sexuality, and all other aspects of life. For example, wealth and money and relationships, etc. So I've dedicated the last 22 years really to discovering what freedom is and to be able to embody these teachings and establish a healthy relationship, a thriving relationship, an inspiring relationship towards all aspects of myself, and use these gifts that I have been given as a human being. Not misuse them, not abuse them, but use them for the highest good of myself and of other people as well. So diving into your essence, dedicating your life towards what you are, your truth, towards freedom, is the greatest gift of life. There is nothing more rewarding than to discover that you're free, that you're whole, that you're complete, that you're everything you want to be already. You're powerful, you're sexy, you're magical, you're wealthy, you're rich, you're wild, you're everything. That's the fullness of who you are and what you are. And I invite you to, instead of pushing away and rejecting and judging and running away and running after, to get to know what you are, to discover that you're free so that you can be with everything and anything, that you can embrace the fullness of who you are, of your experience, of your life, without being dependent on anyone or anything, to be a certain way, to do something, or to say something, to not to say something, to be able to give the meaning to your life that only you can give. No one else can give meaning and purpose to your life. You are the one. You are the chosen. You are the beloved. You are the diamond. You are that which you have been seeking. And so, warm welcome to this podcast called Born to be Free. These were now 4 episodes dedicated to giving you a context and a background into my life and these teachings, this body of knowledge that is available to all of us human beings to discover our essential freedom, to be a Jivan Muktihi, a Jivan Muktaha, a person that is free while living. And so, thank you so much for being here with me. There are going to be many, many episodes coming. I'm so inspired to continue with this podcast, Born to be Free, to interview people that have dedicated their life to freedom, that have dedicated to explore and embody the full potentiality of their existence, of our existence. And so there will be many episodes dedicated to all and many different kinds of topics. And I so look forward to sharing this with you, to get to know you, to invite you to my community. If you are a spiritual seeker, a person that is ready to embrace your life and take responsibility for your life, a person that wants to be free and live freely and embrace all of you, you're so welcome. Please comment in the comments how this has landed for you, your favorite moments. Please share this episode if you were inspired and if you feel this can help other people. And I look forward to continue growing with you and to continue celebrating this precious gift of life. Oh. From my heart to yours, deepest gratitude for your presence. May you follow your wildest dreams, live your highest purpose, and expand into the infinite, because that's what you are.